Well, this video talks about a unique little situation that sometimes managers and leaders don't think about. I give you an example. On one occasion, I was coaching an executive team for a worldwide logistics organization. And it was interesting because the HR manager is the one that brought coaching in for both the executive staff and for the managers that reported to them. And it was sort of interesting because I shared this with her during a break. And there came a time in this when I was coaching them through that they sort of went on a discussion of something, and so often people that were facilitators or teachers or people that were talking would take offense to that. What I did is I stepped back and I said, you know what? Let's just ride this horse and see where it goes for a second. And they took it to a very good place, which ended up talking about the next two things I was going to talk about. And they actually apologized for stealing the subject matter, and I said, let me show you you didn't. And I went back and I showed them. They went to the next two levels. During the break, I was talking with the HR rep, and I mentioned that, and then I told her, I said, you know what? I just said, you know what? Let's ride this horse for a minute and see where it goes. And she said, man, I'm so glad you did that. And that is something very often that a leader does. A leader does not just point fingers and dictate and tell and all of that. Very often leaders ask a question and listen very, very intently, and ask some other questions and help people see where this horse should go. It is fairly interesting when you think of it in that respect, though. In fact, I had a client that I'm working with right now. It was kind of interesting because we had coached through a tool that he could use. And the next week we got back together and he talked for about 25 minutes on just some questions that I had asked him. And it was interesting because I said, you mind if I throw something out on the table? He said, sure. And I said, you remember this tool? He said, yeah. I said, you just used it. And he said, really? I said, yeah, turn back a couple of pages in your journal. We turned back to that tool and I said, see, you've been using this. And he just looked over his glasses and he said, you're sneaky. And I said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. You're doing it. You're doing it. So the thing I just want to leave you with very simply is leaders don't just tell and mandate and dictate. Very often a leader asks a question and says, let's see where this horse goes. Because sometimes they're going to go right where you wanted them to go. Sometimes they're going to go to someplace even better. It's good to let the person feel like they've got control of it for a bit and kind of see where it goes. So I leave that with you for this week. Look around your organization and see to what extent you have opportunities to maybe ride this horse just a little bit and see where it goes. So you may wonder what an example from my past about what it was like riding a horse for a moment. The team that I led at Griffiths Air Force Base, and you can see some of the pictures here, I was very passionate about developing that team. And there came a time one day where they were talking about something that was very interesting, and I was standing in the presence. I didn't jump in. I didn't try to control it or derail it, because I said, let's see where this horse goes for a second, because it looks like it may be going to someplace pretty cool. And they were actually exploring a little bit, and one of the co-pilots sat down with a pencil and paper, and he said, we're the tip of the spear. And he started jotting some notes down, but as he sat down, he looked at me with a look in his eye that he was trying to see if I was on board with it. And all I did was I winked and I nodded at him. And they went to someplace pretty nice. So it's very easy to do if you develop your team. And if you get comfortable with sometimes riding a horse to see where it goes, amazing things can happen. And in the process, you can develop your people. So I leave that with you.